in baseball. In WOBA versus left-handers, Kansas City is 20th overall. If you're looking for a slightly cheaper option, or maybe somebody who might even be in your free agent pool in a shallow enough league, Adrian Hauser of Milwaukee has Tuesday night, I think, against the depleted Chicago Cubs, and then Sunday at the previously depleted Pittsburgh club. Chicago 20th in WOBA versus right-handers. Pittsburgh is 27th. Hauser pitched against Pittsburgh earlier this week and had a truly weird result, 6 1/3 no-hit innings, but 5 walks and 1 earned run. He has pretty decent numbers overall, a 3.55 ERA, but don't be looking for strikeouts. He's only got 80, I think, in 48 walks, something like that, in his less than 70 innings, I believe, or 65. I'm not sure. But anyhow, he walks too many guys and doesn't strike out enough. But when a guy's going into play the Cubs and the Pirates, you got to be interested.
Yeah, and those starts are away at the more of a pitcher ballpark, so it's a good call on that. Ruvain, how about you?
I actually have 3 pitchers that I'm interested in. Usually I'm not interested in 2-star pitchers, but 3 of them actually pique my interest. First of all is Paolo Espino from the Washington Nationals. He's scheduled to have 2 starts this week at the Mets, which he actually shut them out for 5 innings on June 28th at Citi Field. And he's pitching again at Citi Field. He's got the one, and Citi Field is one of the lowest runs per game in stadiums in the entire MLB, and the Mets are just not hitting, so he's perfect for that. The second game is against Atlanta and Drew Smyly. You know, the Atlanta lineup, you don't know what you're going to get with that. Both those games, you're probably, the Met game is actually against Carlos Carrasco, so you don't know how long he's going to go. So both of those games, if Espino can just outlast the opposing starter, he can actually get a possible win. He's only 7% owned in CBS, so he's a guy to look for. Another guy who, if you're willing to stomach him, then it's very possible you can pick him up, and that's J.A. Happ. He was traded to the Cardinals. I'm not sure why the Cardinals even got him because they're not really in the race, but they traded for J.A. Happ. His last 3 starts, his ERA is 9.64. That scares people away, but he's scheduled for Pittsburgh and Kansas City, both at Pittsburgh and Kansas City. So that's a guy you may want to think about going after, especially the WOBA numbers that Patrick just mentioned on some of those teams against lefties. They don't really hit that much. So J. Happ, if you really want to, if you can stomach it, then he's a guy you can go after. And a guy really, really, really deep. This is really deep. Carlos Hernandez of Kansas City. He was in their bullpen until recently. He's made 2 starts so far since he became a starter, both of them against the White Sox. He won both of them, 11 innings, 10 strikeouts, 6 hits, 1 run. That's pretty good. Now, the starts are not that great. It's against the Yankees and against the Cardinals, both at home. But so far, Carlos Hernandez, his K rate in the minors, it was between 9 and 10 for 9 innings. He only has a 34% hard hit rate, and his fastball is 97 on average, 97.7 this year. His slider is 86. He's got a curve at 82. He's only owned in 3% of CBS leagues. So you want to take a dart, this is the perfect dart to use on.
So I don't really love the pitchers for this week, but a couple just to talk about. Drew Smyly, 40% owned. He gets Cincinnati and at Washington. Not terrible. Atlanta can score, so if he goes to 5, you never know. Alec Mills, only 15% owned, so he could be available in some deeper leagues versus Milwaukee and then at Miami. That's not a bad start. And how about, I can't believe I'm saying this, Matt Harvey. He gets Detroit and then Boston, so one decent start, one not. Since July 18th, he's made 4 starts. He's pitched 22 innings. Can you guys guess how many earned runs he's given up in those 22 innings?
2, I think it was.
Yeah, 2.
I was going to say 2, yeah.
0.81 ERA since the All-Star break, 0.72 whip. I don't know. I mean, it could all go to hell very quickly, but you know, do you want to ride the bandwagon if you're desperate for starts? You might. So Matt Harvey, just be aware of what he's doing. All right, injury update, Ruvain. Go for it.
Well, let's start with Matt Harvey. He actually left his last start with a tweaked knee against the Yankees, so just be careful. Make sure he is healthy enough to make those starts when he comes up next. I mentioned Fernando Tatis earlier in this early episode. He's on the IL with left shoulder inflammation. They said they're going to wait about 10 days to reevaluate him. Surgery is still not off the table if he doesn't improve in those 10 days. He was able to recover 10 days before, so we'll see how that goes with that. Joaquin Soria, the other former Arizona Diamondback closer, was picked up by Toronto. He's on the IL with right middle finger inflammation. We don't know how bad it's going to be right now. So Jordan Romano and Brad Hand should continue to close for the Blue Jays. Domingo Germán, he's on the IL with the right rotator cuff strain. We don't know how bad it is really. I mean, we know it's a strain, but that's it. He was going to be shut down, no throwing for 7 to 10 days, and then be reevaluated then. So we'll see how that works out. Kevin Biggio was placed on the IL with neck and back problems. We don't know how bad it is, but the Blue Jays are hopeful that he's able to come off the IL at the earliest available on August 13th. But someone who was activated in his stead was Corey Dickerson. So if he's available in your league, he's already starting to hit, so he's a guy to pick up. Another guy who's been pretty good is the guy who's been filling in for Kevin Biggio, and that's Santiago Espinal. He's not that owned in a lot of leagues, and he's been hitting for a pretty good average. Chris Paddock is on the IL with a strained left oblique. He injured it during a bullpen session. We don't know how long he's going to be out for, and they don't know who's going to replace him. And that's going to be it for this week. Hopefully, over the next couple of weeks, only we'll see is players coming back, because as September gets closer, you're going to start to hear a lot more players get shut down for the season, and hopefully it'll give you more clarity on who you can drop and who you have to pick up for.
Yep. Now, great update. Patrick, thank you so much for coming on the show. Always a pleasure to have you. It's always a great show. We get into some moral and ethical ground, and it's really great to hear your take as one of the greats in the industry. I always think that you have reasonable, very analytical way of approaching things, and always the high moral ground. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Patrick.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I'd just like to wrap up by saying don't be sleeping on Detroit's offense. They're scoring runs these days, and if you've got a guy going into Detroit and Boston for a 2-star week, I might give Matt Harvey a pass even if he wasn't hurt. And Ruvain mentioned Jay Happ. I listened to his argument very carefully, but I have decided I shall remain hapless.
All right, so there's Patrick, who shuts down our suggestions for the pitchers this week. But that's great. We love that on the show. I mean, we want differing opinions, and like I said, I wasn't really happy with these pitchers this week. I'd much rather put some middle relievers, especially if you're close in ERA. Don't chance it. Just fortify your ERA. Obviously, if you are really down and desperate and need it, then those are guys to give a shot. But yeah, point taken about Harvey and Happ though. For that. And again, thank you so much, Patrick. Well, before you go, why don't you tell us where we can find you, where we can reach you, and all things Patrick Davitt.
My Twitter feed is at Patrick Davitt. It's Patrick like the saint in Ireland, Davitt, all one word, all lowercase, but I don't think that matters. The Baseball HQ Radio podcast drops every Friday afternoon. There's a post-trade deadline special edition that came out on Saturday earlier this week, so if you want to have another set of analyses of the trade deadline for fantasy purposes, you might want to check into that as well. The podcast is available pretty much everywhere. I'm not doing a lot of writing at baseballhq.com, but I will be doing some research-based writing later on after the season is over, so if you're a baseballhq.com subscriber, keep an eye peeled for that, because I've got some pretty good, interesting research ideas that I'm going to be addressing. Thanks, you guys.
I have to imagine that most people listening to our show have heard you on the Baseball HQ Radio, and for those who don't, Baseball HQ Radio is really the gold standard for podcasting. It really is. Patrick gets the best guests on every single week. He goes in-depth around the league. There's surprise pitchers. There's just so much in there. If you haven't checked it out, it's an absolute must. Ruvain, how about you?
You can follow me on Twitter at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out all these injury updates, how long I think they're going to be out based on my medical opinion, and who's going to be up next. I also have a weekly article on Rotoballer that comes out every Saturday discussing who's going to be injured, who's next up, and helps you with your FAAB every Sunday.
All right, and I'm Ariel Cohen. You can find me on Twitter at ATCNY, my work over at Fangraphs, Sportsline, and Rotoballer, and of course you can listen to me right here on the Beat the Shift podcast each week. We're getting to the home stretch. We'll do these strategy sections as much as we can to help you get set through the end of the year. And waiver wire, there's still time, as we said on the show. If you're in the middle of the pack, don't worry about the standings, the ratios. Don't be daunted. You can make it up. Hope the other guys just decline, and stick to your guns and you've got a moral and ethical obligation to do so, as we've dictated on this show. All right, once again, thank you so much to Patrick Davitt for joining us in the show, and from all of us here at Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.